Well, thanks very much, Ollie. Good morning and a warm welcome to everyone. As Ollie said, the sessions aim to support you in developing your expression of interest for our call for research proposals on the topic of interventions targeting the social determinants of a healthier older age. If that's what you're expecting, great. If not, welcome anyway. We'd love you to stay, but understand you might choose to leave us now. No? Okay. Just before we get into the content, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce the team. First up, Dr. Sanjay Thakrar, our Head of Research Policy and Awards. Sarah Allport, our Head of Communities and Governance. Ollie Suter, who's already introduced himself, our Grants Manager, and Dr. Gordon Bruce, our Grants Officer. I'm Susan Kay. I'm Chief Executive of the Dunhill Medical Trust. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we're an independently endowed charitable foundation whose charitable objects are focused on researching the mechanisms of ageing and improving health and social care for older people in the UK. We distribute around £5 million in grant funding each year, but we also collaborate with others so that we can provide more than that. And we use our investment portfolio to support our wider mission. Can I have the next slide, please, Ollie, on the strategic framework, please? In the summer of 2020, we launched our new strategic framework, which set out our broad intent, our key themes for focus over the next 5 years, and the principles we expect our award holders to demonstrate that they share with us. Could you just move us on to the theme slide, Ol? Our priorities for the plan period see us continuing to focus on improving our understanding of the underlying mechanisms of ageing and age-related disease, but also targeting the social determinants of healthy life expectancy, improving the quality of life for older people, in particular developing and delivering suitable living environments. And some of you will know that we launched a large themed call for that this time last year, and those grants are just getting underway now. Addressing issues of age-related vision, hearing and oral health, and interventions which have the potential to prevent, delay or reduce future health and social care requirements, in particular improving the ability to maintain functional independence for older adults. But the focus of today's webinar is around that theme around targeting the social determinants of healthy life expectancy. As I said, we made our first call for proposals under the new framework in spring last year on the theme of suitable living environments for older people. It was the first of our major calls which sought to support closer relationships between researchers and community organisations, and it required every proposal to have a community organisation as a co-applicant. We made those first awards in the autumn, as I said. You can read more on the website in the news stories. If you could just take us to that slide, Ollie, that's the page. We received more than 30 applications at expression of interest stage for that call. Around half were invited to submit full applications, and around half of those were ultimately successful. And we've actually published the titles of the successful projects. If we just move on to that slide, Ollie. So you can read about those on the website. And actually here, I just wanted to say a word about what makes for a successful application and our approach to giving feedback. Could you just move us on to the next slide, please? In calls like this that have a two-stage process, long experience has taught us that the reason an application doesn't make it over the line at expression of interest stage, it's just simply because the PI or organisation wasn't eligible, or it didn't meet the funding criteria, or, and this is most common because most people do know to check their eligibility and whether or not they meet the funding criteria, but most commonly because it didn't sufficiently demonstrate how the project and the team were incorporating our principles around equity, diversity and inclusion, involvement of older people, support for research and development, just a word, was signatory to the Concordat and the development of research careers, and setting out its engagement strategy and plans for making a practical difference. You can see our principles in the strategic framework document. I want to say up front, if you're not invited to submit a full proposal, you will be directed to the detailed but generic feedback that we publish on the website after each of our calls. You can see an example, I think it's on the next slide. You can see an example from last year's Suitable Living Environments call. If you're not recommended funding after consideration of your full application, you will at that stage receive detailed feedback on your proposal because we get that, obviously the proposals will be put to peer review and we'll be able to give you detailed feedback at that stage. It's not that you don't receive detailed feedback after the expression of interest stage, it's just that that's the generic feedback that we publish on the website. I know this might be disappointing for some, and can we say, and we do again and again, how much we appreciate the work that goes into making proposals. But as you see, we are a very small team and we've got large volumes of applications to deal with. It's not just this call for proposals that we're processing. So I think it's all the more important that we're clear on what you can expect from us so that you can make your decisions accordingly. Okay, so let's get on with why we're here. Our next key theme for focus right now is, unsurprisingly, given the recent past, around addressing the social determinants of health. In much of our work, we're taking a two-pronged approach to making change, to support the development of the research and the evidence base that can be used in policy development, but also to support organisations who are working in communities to demonstrate what works, which is in itself helpful in demonstrating at the policy level what needs to be done. For those of you who've been following our recent work, this is the approach we've taken with our Technology for an Ageing Population Panel for Innovation, or TAPI, with the Commission on the, and also we did some work with the Social Care Institute for Excellence on the Commission on the Role of Housing in the Future of Care and Support, both of which have informed the Social Care White Paper. But we've also supported community organisations to demonstrate what works, to reinforce the research-based recommendations of both of those programmes, and to ensure the proposed additional public funding is spent well. The current context provides a real opportunity to develop a better understanding of the systemic radical changes that are needed to improve outcomes for people. With this funding call, we're aiming to attract proposals which go beyond simply investigating the links between and impacts of the social determinants of healthy older age, and instead to focus on interventions to address them. And this is why it lends itself so well to collaborating with community organisations. So this could include the development and testing of new interventions, or the synthesis of existing evidence to better understand the conditions or mechanisms by which an intervention works or not. As a result of an open consultation that we carried out earlier this year, we've also identified some areas in which we're interested. Could you just move us on to that slide, Ollie, please? We particularly welcome applications for testing interventions that have the potential to be scaled regionally or nationally, and applicants should set out their plans to share their learning. Because this is focused on interventions, as for the Suitable Living Environments call, we require researchers to co-apply with community organisations. Our experience of the recent past has shown us just how keen the most innovative of community organisations who are delivering housing, health and social care for older people are to base their service developments on evidence and to share that with others. Some of you will have followed the United St Saviour's Trust, Johnny Johnson Housing or St Monica's, to name but a very few in our recent funded work. But often, many community organisations tell us that they don't know how to access the evidence or latest research, or indeed how to get the questions they want answered prioritised. So given our long history of providing funding to both researchers and community organisations, we're starting out on a mission to help researchers and community organisations to work together. We're all still learning, and we're now providing another opportunity, during co-production week I should add, in the form of this call. In short, we're looking for research that needs to be done. For this reason, we're offering some flexibility in the type of award or grant that can be applied for. And Sanjay's going to talk, and Ollie are going to talk a bit more about that. Now I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to talk a little more about our approach to the involvement of community organisations, and then Ollie, who's going to walk you through the nuts and bolts, and then we'll have time to answer some of the questions that are coming up in the chat. So thanks very much. Look forward to your questions. Sarah.
Thank you, Sue. So as Sue stated, we want to follow on the success of the Suitable Living Environments call and bringing community organisations and clinical and academic researchers closer together. And the reason that we wanted to do this again is what we saw in that funding call was a true partnership of equals, from co-creating the research question and methodology to having equal seats around the table, and community organisations being considered a true research partner rather than a recruitment source. So what do we mean by third sector community organisations? Well, we define a community organisation as any third sector and or government organisation with a local and or community focus, which provides services and support to older people in the United Kingdom. I should add that we would normally consider an NHS hospital trust as a research organisation. However, for this funding call, we would consider an NHS hospital trust as a community partner, so long as they are providing a truly community focus on older people and are active in shaping the proposal and are not just seen as a recruitment site. So what role do we expect the community organisations to play in the research? Well, of course, the exact role that each member or organisation will play will, of course, depend on the nature of the research. However, as I mentioned, we expect that any real-world questions will be co-developed and partnerships should be genuine, with the community partners fully funded so that their work can be done at full economic cost. Additionally, we also welcome proposals with co-applicants and collaborators from within and beyond academia, including people with lived experience of issues relevant to the proposal. I'll now hand over to Ollie to talk through some of the more details of the funding call. Ollie.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Hopefully everyone can see a slide saying overview of the call and criteria. I think, Sue, there might have just been your screen not quite catching up, but hopefully we're all on the same track. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Sue. And as Sarah said, I'm now going to give you a bit of a sort of step-by-step through the call guidelines and a bit of an overview of the application process. Just to say that the call guidelines and a summary of all the kind of key headings on this slide are available on our Apply for Funding page on our website. And really, we can't emphasize enough that, you know, the call guidelines are the sort of key document here if you're thinking of applying. So please do give them a thorough read if you're interested in applying to the call. But I'm going to step you through each of these headings and at the same time also try and cover some of the questions that we received in advance of the webinar. So in terms of who can apply, hopefully it's already been made quite clear that really this call is designed to support collaborative research between teams of researchers and community organisations. If you're thinking of applying as a lead applicants must be researchers based at a UK university or at an eligible research organisation. And on page 4 of the guidelines, there's a link to a list of eligible research organisations. And lead applicants must apply alongside teams that include at least one co-applicant from a community partner organisation. And that's a community organisation, as Sarah has just described. We're open to proposals which include more than one community partner, so we're not limiting that. And a community organisation could be included on multiple proposals so long as they have the capacity to be involved in multiple studies or pieces of research if funded. Now, if you are thinking of applying or you've already read some of the call documents, then you'll see that before you apply, we ask you to complete our eligibility quiz. So this is a fairly generic eligibility quiz that we ask everybody to complete before they apply to any of our research schemes. It's available on our website and it's linked to in the guidelines. So again, please do complete it if you're thinking of applying. But there's just a couple of points from that I thought I would highlight now that might be helpful. So it's a general rule of ours that projects with a specific focus on cancer are not eligible. And then secondly, if you're currently a lead applicant or a principal investigator on a grant from us, or you're currently a co-applicant on 2 or more grants from us, then you might not be eligible to apply to this scheme. So if you're in any doubts or you have any questions about that, please email us and we can assist. But putting that to one side, I think that hopefully what's clear is that we've tried to make a lot of flexibility here in terms of who can be part of the proposed team. So as Sarah said, we welcome co-applicants and collaborators from both within and beyond academia. Where appropriate, we are encouraging multidisciplinary teams, and whilst any research that's proposed should primarily be relevant to issues in the UK or focus on issues relevant to older people in the UK, we're open to international collaborations where those are clearly justified and again where they're appropriate to the work that you're trying to do. We received a question about whether this call is open to early career lead applicants or first-time lead applicants. The short answer is yes, definitely. We actively encourage applicants from applications from first-time or early career lead applicants. If that's the case, then we'd expect you to outline clearly detailed support from other members of the team to enable you to do that. And I'll go into a bit more detail in a few moments about salary costs for first-time or early career lead applicants. Moving on to research topics. So Sue has already highlighted some of the highlight research topics that we've picked out and which are listed on the call guidelines. Just to give you a bit of background to how those came about. So during the development of the call, we circulated an open survey where we asked people for their thoughts on priorities within the overall theme of the call. And a number of topics, including the ones that we've shared with you already, were listed in that. So that's where those sort of highlight notices came from. So those are the key topics that we're highlighting for this call, but we've received a few questions around whether we're open to proposals which are beyond those topics. And yes, we're open to proposals on any topic within the overall theme of the call. So as long as it fits within the theme of interventions targeting social determinants of healthy older age, then that is open to you. And I just want to reiterate that this call is really designed to enable you to apply for a range of approaches and topics. The key thing, regardless of your research question, is that you need to tell us what you're planning to do, why, and what and who you need to make it happen. So demonstrate to us the problem or the issue, why it's important, and the solutions and what you need to make it happen. And it's very much the same message for eligible award types. So we're offering flexibility, as Sue mentioned, in the type and duration of funding that can be applied for. So again, in general, regardless of the type of funding mechanism that you're applying for, we're looking for you to tell us what you need to address the questions and the funding mechanism that's best suited to this. So on page 5 of the guidelines, we've listed some eligible award types alongside some indicative durations and costs. They include things like seed funding, project grant funding, PhD studentships, postdoctoral fellowships, etc. I'd like to just stress the word indicative here. So those amounts and those durations are there as a guide, and we're open to proposals which exceed them as long as they are fully justified. One thing that I do want to highlight there is that proposals should focus on a discrete, defined research question. So we're not looking for proposals which are trying to effectively provide sort of multifaceted group of broadly related studies or sort of programs of studies. So it should be a discrete, defined research question or set of research questions. We had a question around the types of awards that were made in similar calls previously. So Sue in her introduction mentioned the news item that we published when we announced the awards made under our call for delivering suitable living environments and communities. So please do, I would signpost you towards that if you're interested in reading more about the awards that were made under that call. It gives you full details of who's involved and what they're looking to do. But just in terms of award types, in that call we funded a mixture of postdoctoral fellowships, more traditional project grants, and project grants which included a PhD student within the research team. So a mix of different funding mechanisms there. Eligible costs. So perhaps not surprisingly, we've received a few queries around eligible costs and what can be included. Page 6 of the guidelines provides full details of eligible costs, so I'm not going to run through them here in detail, but there are some key points that we want to highlight at this stage. So broadly, apart from some specific cases which are listed in the guidelines, we don't meet overhead costs for research organisations. However, we do, and this is an important point, we do expect funding to be included within the proposed budget to compensate the community partner organisation or organisations at their full economic cost. So that includes overhead costs. That's an important point. In terms of research salary costs, if you're a first-time or an early career lead applicant and you're applying without tenure at your host institution, then you may be eligible to claim your salary. If that's the case, then a letter of support from your university or research organisation will be required at the full application stage to confirm that they agree to extend your contract to cover the duration of the grant if you're successful. And then just on the topic of salary costs, broadly, we'll also cover the directly incurred salary costs of those employed on the grant. And we definitely welcome researchers employed on the grant being named as co-investigators if they're making a substantive contribution to the work. A point about, I guess, logistics. At this stage, at the expression of interest stage, we're asking you to upload a financial summary alongside your application. And this can be in the format that best suits you. So we're open to the format that you provide that, but we have provided some guidance in the application as to what needs to be included. And really the key thing here is that it provides enough detail to demonstrate to us that what you plan to do and what you've said you're going to do in your proposal is adequately resourced. So just to keep that in mind. Moving on to the application process and the timeline. So this is the timeline as set out in the guidelines. I'm not going to walk you through all of these, but I will pick out a few key points. And just to keep in mind that all of these deadlines are set. And please don't forget that the expression of interest stage involves both completing an online application form and also submitting a short video. Page 12 of the guidelines explains what the video should include. And in the application, in the guidelines, we've also provided links to the blank application form templates for you as well, so for both stages. But please note that these are just there for planning purposes, so we'll only accept applications which have been submitted online through our grants management portal. Just a quick point on the video. So we're suggesting that you email your video to us, and that's what we did for the Suitable Living Environments call, and it worked well. But we are open to receiving it by other means if that has been pre-agreed and it's feasible. So if you're considering sending it to us in another means, please get in touch with us as soon as possible so that we can hopefully arrange that for you. Just a point about the expression of interest stage. A key point, we've already mentioned that you need to have at least one co-applicant from a community partner. They need to be invited to contribute to your application on the grants portal. And you won't be able to submit your application until they've been invited onto the portal and they've completed what they need to do. And we've provided guidance on how to do that in the guidelines, and we've also got a sort of how-to document which is linked in the guidelines as well. But I would really advise that if you're going to make an application, please invite your community co-applicant onto your system as soon as possible, just so that you can iron out any issues now rather than as we get towards the deadline, because that makes it a stressful situation for everyone involved. The assessment or the reviewer criteria for each stage are also outlined in detail in the guidelines. So for the expression of interest stage, this is page 13. And for the full stage, this is pages 18 and 19. And then I just want to draw attention to two dates in the timeline. So the 9th to the 16th of December of this year is the rebuttal period. So if you're invited to submit a full application, this is your opportunity to respond to some of the peer reviewer feedback. So please make sure that you're available for that period. And also the 23rd of February 2023 is when interviews will be held for postdoctoral fellows, if that's deemed necessary by the panel. So if you're thinking of applying for a postdoctoral fellowship, please ensure that you leave this date free. Unfortunately, we don't have much wiggle room with either of those dates. And then finally, it's just worth keeping in mind that we're intending to notify applicants of the outcome of their applications by mid-March 2023. So you then need to get everything in order before starting. So realistically, we're expecting the earliest for these grants to start is probably spring 2023. That's not to say that they have to start then, it's just to give you a sense of the timeline of the whole process. So I think that's everything from me. So with that, I'd like to pass over to Sanjay, who's going to be leading us on the Q&A section. So over to you, Sanjay.
Hello, everyone. Yes, hopefully you can hear and see me. Yep, so this is the question and answer portion of the webinar. So I just wanted to say thank you to all those that have provided questions in the registration survey and the chat box. We will address any that haven't been answered during the webinar so far, so please continue to put questions in the chat box now. And any that we haven't had time to address, we will aim to do that after the webinar, and you can feel free to email us, or we will take them out of the chat box. So I think I'll just start with a few that we have received through the registration. So I'll address one straight off. So one of the questions was, is this call focused on a high risk, high reward strategy, or is this specifically for safe research projects? So the way I'd go about answering this is that it's about practical interventions. So we're looking for practical interventions of the potential to benefit older people. So we're open to any type of eligible project if they have the potential to benefit older people. So we'll also want applicants to think through their risks and how they're going to handle them. So, you know, this, so I'm sort of throwing it back to the person who's answered it, in the sense that, you know, that's what we're looking for in terms of, you know, the types of projects that we hope to receive from this call. So hopefully that's answered that question. And then I guess I'll pass this over to the panel. So another question, this time about the video. So is there expected or preferable for the community partner organizations to feature in the video, or is it acceptable for the PI or project team to describe their role and involvement on their behalf? So I think, can I pass this over to Sarah?
Yeah, sure. We really do need the community organisation to feature in the video. It's very difficult when we're assessing applications to understand the extent of their involvement without them featuring. However, what I would say is we're not expecting any sort of BAFTA nominee type productions here. It could be as simple as some slides with some audio, pre-recorded audio, talking to them, or actually really simple to do is just get yourselves together on a Zoom call, press record, and just talk through what your involvement's going to be, why you want to be involved, what you're going to be contributing to the project, and what outcomes you're aiming for. Simple as that. Press save, check it looks okay, and email it through to us. But we do really need the community organisation involved. Thanks, Sanjay.
Yeah, can I just add something to that, Sanjay? I think from our experience last time, Sarah's right, the focus has to be on the involvement of the community organisation. And that element of the project. We're not looking for a kind of an overview of the whole project, a TV ad for the whole project, if you like. That's too much detail. What we're looking for is, you know, is to focus on the real contribution and the partnership.
Thank you both. And so while we're still on the community theme, I guess one of the questions that came in the chat was, does an NHS board qualify as a community partner? So yeah, I think, Sarah, is it okay to pass over to you?
Yeah, in the same way as an NHS trust, they would be eligible to apply as a community partner. But as with an NHS trust and with community organisations in general, we're really looking for the proposal to emphasise what their contribution is going to be and the outcomes that they're aiming for through the project. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So another question we received was, are multidisciplinary studies more favoured by the review panel? And yeah, I guess another question sort of along those lines. So Ollie, is it all right if I pass to you?
Yeah, of course. So I guess the short answer is yes, but only if that's the suitable approach for the intervention or the study that you're looking to do. So essentially the bigger factor for us is, have you got the right team to do the work that you're looking to do? And that's the bigger factor for us, more so than just, is it multidisciplinary, yes or no? So that's really what you've got to demonstrate in your expression of interest. So if that's the right approach, then yes, we would like to see multidisciplinary teams.
Great, thank you. So there's actually a number of questions quite specific, so I'm going to roll them up actually into one. So it's more around sort of the eligibility of the topic area. So we had one question there about dementia in the chat function. We've had questions about older people and those being released from prison, or where people live being a wider issue, being that mixed or rural settings. Questions around sexual orientation and gender identity, and promoting healthy LGBTQ plus aging, as well as mental well-being. So I would like to say, I guess the short answer here is yes, we're open to proposals on any topic within the wider theme of the call. However, regardless of the topic, proposals will need to demonstrate alignment with our principles and also keep in mind the intervention focus of the call. So hopefully that sort of roundly answered quite a lot of those. We've got another question here, which is project specific, around what are the key deliverables of a good project, or measurable outcomes and outcomes which must be measured in the project. So Sue, is it all right to pass to you?
Yeah, I guess so. I actually just wanted to pick up, just to round off something
Yeah.
you were saying about the criteria. It was the one that we just had in the chat about projects that are among otherwise healthy older adults. Yes, we and it said it was considering older adults of having one or more chronic conditions. Yes, absolutely. We would consider those as well. So just, think about the wider theme of the topic. And if it fits under there, then absolutely. If it's about something that's been driven by the social determinants or the wider environment, absolutely.
And I'll repeat the question about key deliverables, and in terms of measurable outcomes, are these outcomes which must be measured before the end of the project, or outcomes which are measurable but which might take place after the end of the project?
Yeah, I think both and really. I mean, as I think people know, there are going to be long-term outcomes. So actually putting things in place that track those longer term outcomes would absolutely be more than acceptable.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just like, we're rattling through these. So
No, we are. So actually, there's one comment that's related to an earlier question. It's obviously somebody that didn't join us earlier. Not sure whether I understand the guidelines correctly. Can university overheads be included? No, university overheads can't be included in the budget, as is the case for all research projects funded by AMRC member organisations. Universities receive a contribution to their overheads from the Charities Research Support Fund. So that's why it's not just us being contrary. There's an agreement across funders about this.
thank you very much. And I think I can actually round off one from the chat very quickly. Can the funds be used for PhDs? Yes. So that's that one as well. And actually related to that, could fellowships and the PhD studentships be part-time? Once again, yes. And then here's actually an interesting question from the registration. Are you open to proposals taking life course approaches? And so, Ollie, is it all right to pass to you?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, again, yes, that's something we're open to if it's the right approach for the question or the questions that you're trying to answer. I guess the key thing is, again, you'd need to be making it clear how the ultimate benefit is for older people. But otherwise, yeah, we're open to life course approaches.
Perfect, thank you. And then I guess a sort of related question, are there any priorities on whether the research targets certain age groups, i.e. over 80s?
No, beyond the focus being on older people, we're not targeting any particular age groups.
Perfect, and now I will quickly scan the Q&A for some questions. These will be live read. So, well, actually, there was one question around what we would describe as a multifaceted program. So, if I read that out for everyone on the call, could you please give an example of a large multifaceted program that's not eligible for funding? So, Sue, is it all right if I pass this over to you?
Yeah, I guess what we mean by that is we're not looking for proposals around sort of large clinical trials or something like that. This has to be something that's around, I guess it's easy to say, you know, what we are looking for, which, and we've talked about interventions. So it's about testing out those interventions, providing the evidence that can show that those interventions are or are not suitable for wider rollout. What we're not looking for is a sort of a range of linked sub-projects under a wider program that's going to kind of take 5 to 10 years, or, you know, requires sort of 20 or 25 project teams, you know, that sort of huge clinical type program. That's not what we're looking for at all. Plus the fact, it's probably also worth saying we've allocated around 2.5 million to this, so that kind of gives you a sense. We don't want to put hard and fast limits on sort of the grant funding that you apply for. In the guidelines, we've given sort of indicative levels depending on you know, the research team that you're putting forward to carry it out. But we don't, you know, we don't want to put hard and fast limits on those. There is a bit of flexibility, but to give you a sense of the overall envelope that we have to apply to this, it's in the range of £2.5 million.
Thank you very much for that, Sue. And yeah, the guidelines really do explain sort of what we're looking for. And so, you know, a discrete research question doesn't really lend itself to a large multifaceted program. So that's why they're ineligible.
Yeah, and just as the last somebody said, would smaller projects be more interesting than large ones? Well, I don't know whether they would certainly be interesting to us if they're, you know, if they're set to have you know, a really good and positive impact. So I think equally interesting.
Indeed. And so actually a really interesting wider question more generally, are we expecting to be rolling out annual large calls linked to our strategic priorities on an annual basis along these lines each year moving forward?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. As we've said in our strategic framework, we've set out the key themes that we're interested in, and our sort of planning at the moment is that we have one of these sort of big £2.5 million size calls a year in that sort of 5-year plan, and they will be linked to those themes. So yeah, the short answer is yes.
And I guess I've got a quite specific question here, but I'll try and make it a bit more general. So it's with regards to matched funding from the institution. And so would we accept in-kind or financial contributions from those applying? Sue, is it all right to pass over to you?
Yeah, absolutely. We welcome contributions if that enables you to do more. Absolutely, there's no issue with that. In-kind contributions, yes, but you know, we don't count in-kind as well, we're making this contribution to overhead. Overheads are treated quite differently, and that it wouldn't mean that, you know, you would be looked on more favorably. But, you know, if you are able to make a contribution, or you've got some other partner who can make a contribution to the project, then all well and good. But you know, that's great. But as I say, it won't kind of get you sort of bumped up the list necessarily.
Thank you very much. And so there's a question here with a specific sort of topic, but I think I'll pick up on the more general part of it. Say a community organization, do they need a research partner to be the lead applicant, or can the research partner apply themselves? So I think I can actually cover that. The research partner needs to be the lead applicant. So, you know, we're here in fact, this actually can linked to a question that actually I think Sarah can help with, where someone has asked, as a charity, could they apply solo, or as a community partner, could they apply solo, or what is the best approach to partner with a research organization? Sarah, is it all right to cover that?
Yeah, so as No problem. As you said, the application does need to come from the research partner, so we couldn't accept applications solely from community organisations. And then the second part of the question was around how do you go about making those links? We would suggest that you make contact with the relevant school department or centre at the nearest university to you who has a research specialism in the area that you're interested in, and just start a conversation with them. Alternatively, if you want to, you could put a little about yourself with some contact information in your area that you're interested in into the chat function, and we'll probably keep the chat function open for about 5 minutes after the webinar. Or if you prefer to, because it's quite a small box, you could email grants@dunhillmedical.org.uk. But if you could do that by the end of the week, and then what we'll do is we'll combine any chat with any emails, and also pick up on some of those unanswered questions. And then all of that will be emailed to anybody who's registered for the webinar, and we'll send that one afterwards. Oh, there we go. Grants@dunhill's gone in the chat box. Thanks.
So yeah, still a few questions. Obviously, yeah, my little chat box is quite small, so I'm obviously scanning across them. So I think I'm going to try and distill one around interventions. So the guidelines talk about the development of interventions being within the scope of the call. However, obviously, as we're talking, they're just the person who's asked the question is just wanting to understand whether it's actually more about testing interventions that are already at the implementation stage. So I think who would like to take that question around the focus of what we're hoping from these interventions?
I will. It can be both, and I think what we're thinking around that is that if you've got a community partner, they might well be looking to test something that is ready to be implemented. So you've kind of developed it in research, or you've picked it, you've picked it up in an evidence review, but you're looking to test it out. That I would suggest that that's why you might, the contribution that you're looking for from the community partner. But if you want to also sort of develop interventions, then yes, it's not going to preclude you from doing that. So it's both and. But I suppose what we've been saying is we can imagine it is more likely to be testing things that have got to the implementation stage, but it doesn't have to be.
Thank you very much for that, Sue. And once again, there is some more detail in the guidelines give the flavor of what we're looking for in that call. So there is a question here: are there sources of matched funding we would not accept? So
I guess the answer to that is just if there's something that you're considering, then just email us and we can answer you specifically. I don't know, if you've got a contribution that's been made to you as a bunch of cash in a carrier bag from Russia, then the answer is no. Okay, but if if you've got something specific in mind and you want to explore it with us, then just drop a line to grants@dunhill.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. I was going to say email us. We'll obviously, all these questions we'll address on a case-by-case basis. And yeah, I guess the question is, what is the source of match funding? And then we'll deal with it by that point. So, right, I think we've covered quite a few of these. And then obviously I don't want to leave the webinar as a whole just hanging as I speed read some of the longer ones. So I think actually at this point I might pass on to Sue for the closing remarks, but please do keep the questions coming in the question in the chat, and we will okay, it's not Russia, that's good to know. But yeah, so I'm going to pass on to Sue. Thank you very much for the questions. Keep them coming. We will answer them out with or email grants@dunhillmedical.org.uk directly. So thank you very much. And Sue.
Yeah, no, I don't have much more to add. As I say, we're always open to questions. If anything occurs to you later, then please do. Just to reiterate what Sarah says, if you're a community organisation looking for a research partner, you can either approach your local university direct or drop the broad details in the chat box or email us, and we'll try and match you up with a suitable research organisation. So please feel free to do that as well. But yeah, as everybody's sort of saying thank you, that's marvellous. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for listening. And we very much look forward to your applications. Thank you. Goodbye.